Join us on the Swim Monkey.
Swim
Monkey
TV. On the Monkey.
Holding water, in the water we go. We talk about our future champions, swim techniques and Olympic strokes. Holding water, so much you will know about dolphin kicks, flip turns, dives, and how to find an awesome coach. Hosted by Brian Welter and Tyler Kearns. Holding water is where competitive swimming is learned.
What's up, everybody? Hope everybody in swimming world is out there doing great. Back after a week hiatus for Holding Water, the only age group dedicated swimming show out there that we know of, at least right now. And we're excited to be back with you guys. I'm sure there's somebody out there doing it, but we're the ones that we know about, so we can claim it right now. We're just excited to be back with you guys. We have another group of wonderful guests, and just want to plug that all you coaches out there, if you guys have comments, questions, you want to throw in any information about your specific club and what's going on with you guys, jump in there. Brian's got a visitor right there with him. We're excited to hopefully have an interactive show for you guys tonight. So, Brian, what's been going on, man?
Not too much, man. Just got done with practice. The beauty of COVID, get to swim on Sundays during football season. But yeah, just got done with that. So luckily, Chiefs played Thursday and won, so it doesn't really matter.
Hey, we're on the Florida Swimming Network. I'm sure we got some Bucks fans in here listening right now. They're getting ready for a big Brady Breeze matchup in about 30 minutes.
No kidding. But moving on, we've got a couple of great guests, a couple of guys I've known for a pretty long time that have been staples of consistency at their programs. The first one we'll bring on is Scott Ward. He's been at Eagle Swim Team for 28 years roughly, and he's been doing this at a high level for all those years. So, he's done a great job up there. He's the head coach. And then we've got from Northern Kentucky Clippers, we've got Chad Rehkamp, and he is the newly promoted head coach at Kentucky Clippers, and he was the head age group coach there for how long, Chad?
20 years.
20 years, head age group coach, and just recently became the head coach. So a lot of experience and knowledge in this group of guests. So we'll get right at it. One of the things that as an age group coach I wanted to talk about was how do you figure out with a group of kids that maybe is B-level swimmers, how do you figure out which one of those kids or which of those kids have the potential to be A-level swimmers, have the potential to be LSC champions, or are going to develop into national level swimmers? Sort of what are some of the traits that you guys look for, whether it's physical like body line or it's mental as far as attitude? Like what do we see? And from Scott, from your standpoint, having been there and been the head coach as long as you have, how do you coach the coaches to find that stuff? So we'll start with you, Scott.
All right, great. Well, first of all, thanks for having me on the show. One of the things that we always try to do when we talk with our coaches, the coaches, we have meetings and we'll talk about in each group. And typically I like to know which kids are just really out into swimming, which kids are really listening, which kids are showing that they kind of love, so to speak, the grind, right, of doing the swimming and doing the training. Because I feel like, most of the best kids that we've have had that early on where they really love the sport and they seem to really want to do the work and do the extra. So I think that's important. I do want to say you don't want to rule out kids that maybe don't have that yet, because I'm sure we've all had kids that have come through our program where we were unsure if they were going to make it. And for whatever reason, whether it be, an inspirational moment or seeing someone that they were friends with that broke through and did something great and the light went on for them, particularly in boys, you'll see that, but really even with girls. So that's the first thing is really we like to look at the mental side of it. The second thing we really like to see is kicking. I mean, we're really big into that. We do some different types of test sets and tracking for kicking. And, we like to see which, and obviously a pure breaststroker. I worked at one of the select camps where Kevin Cordes was, and I was, he couldn't really do anything until all of a sudden we started doing breaststroke, and it was like, oh, that's why he's here, right? So you don't want to rule out kids that, maybe are pure breaststrokers either, but we look at kicking. And then the other thing that it's hard to really measure it, but you can just see it with your eye if you spend some time on the deck, is kids that seem to really have good balance in the water and how they flow through the water. They may not be able to grab water yet. It's I like the title of the show, Holding Water. But if kids can kick and they have pretty good balance in the water, then I think that's our job as coaches, is to start coaching them and teaching them how to grab the water and hold on to it. So, but mostly attitude, kicking, and then kind of body balance.
Chad, what about you guys?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things I look for is, what's their body type? Are they tall, lanky, short? Do they have the breaststroke, short arms, short legs? Do they have big hands? Do they have big feet? That's probably one of the first impressions I get when they walk onto pool deck. And then, we get them in the water, look at their body lines. Do they understand how their body's moving? Not necessarily if they can get through the water, quick on day one or even, the first couple of years. But, can they feel the water? Do they understand what's happening within the water? Can they kick? And then just the overall work ethic. If the kid is willing to work hard and is willing to listen to what we're telling them, we'll spend a little bit extra time with them and identify, this kid is got some potential. Might not look great right now, but down the road, it's might work for them. But yeah, I think overall, it's a lot of work ethic and their mentality. Are they mentally tough? Can they handle me being in their face or giving them honest feedback? And if they can handle that and are willing to do what we ask them to do, I think that's probably the bigger part of it. Yeah.
So one of the things that I've learned over the years is one of the best milers that I've ever coached in Nashville. I used to make fun of her when she was when she got older. I didn't make fun of her when she was young, but when she got older, when she was young, she was kind of a little heavyset girl who wasn't very good, who didn't get it, didn't have a lot of confidence, but she'd work hard. She'd do what I'd ask her. And then once she grew, she became so strong in the water when she stretched out, and she had that work ethic, and she ended up being the number one miler coming out her senior year and swam at USC for 4 years. And she was, that she was a kid that could have easily been written off. I mean, easily written off. So I think that's something too. I would also say that one of the things I look for besides the body line, I think body line's huge, Scott, is do they feel the water? Do they have a catch? Do they have, even if it's not a great catch or if it's, something where it's a little hokey, but can they move through the water efficiently? And I think that's huge. And I think if you can, after we've been doing this as long as we've been doing it, you can spot that pretty quick in some of those kids. So I think those are kind of things to look for, in my opinion. What about you, Tyler?
Yeah, I mean, when we started talking about this early in the week, going back and forth, I think, look at general just athleticism of the kid. Scott mentioned a little bit earlier about guys and what young boys, one of the things for me with young age group boys is, do they love to race? Because they may not love to practice, at 9, 10, 11, and 12 years old. But down the road, when they, make that decision or have that aha moment that Scott alluded to, maybe the light bulb goes off for them. But if they already love to race and love to compete, I think that's one way we're going to keep them in the sport a lot longer as boys, finding ways for them to be competitive in practice and get them engaged in as many meets as possible. I do look at overall athleticism when kind of evaluating, whether we go through a dynamic warm up and just see, who can plant their foot and move in an opposite direction. And I know that that's not necessarily on top of the water swimming skill, but I think that those people who are more athletic and can make those adjustments and are more pliable are the ones that you can see, productive changes within a form of a season. And it may not take that 2 or 3 year time frame that we've all seen with those kids who are still working towards being ready to take that next step. Also look at torso. I mean, I think that that's really important if you're looking at girls, especially. If you look at the length of the torso for young ladies, especially if they're a short axis kid, I think the longer that torso is, it becomes harder for those guys to be, generally speaking, really, really effective at breaststroke, especially. You see a lot of those girls who are more compact and, like you said, have the shorter arms and can get those hands through and keep the hips up and don't have that long torso that they're fighting against. So just some of those things. But I love seeing an athletic kid who loves to race and just has that mentality of wanting to be coached.
Coachability is definitely important. So guys, along the same lines, so when you do identify a kid like this, I mean, what's the plan? Where do we go with it? How do we figure out, is it something where, is it just based on the kid as to how hard you push them and how fast you try to get them there? Or is it a little bit more systematic where you're just trying to keep them happy and keep them involved and allow them to find that aha moment? Or are we trying to figure out how to make that aha moment, or both? Chad, you want to start off on this one?
Sure. I think it has to depend on the kid and their own personal personality. Some kids you can work them really hard. You can move them along a little quicker. And I've had kids that you got to baby them a little bit, and you got to just give them that little nudge here and there, and I think it just really depends on the kid themselves, their personality. I've had kids that come down the pool deck, and I get into them one time for doing something, and they shut down, and obviously that day it didn't work. So you got to try to find that line of how quick you can do it or how soft you have to be with them, and just identify that fairly quick. Because if you continue down the road of I'm going to push this kid, and they're not ready, you lost. So it's really the individual.
Yeah, and I would say we're very similar to Chad in that we really just kind of want the athlete to kind of find their own path there as far as like how fast they want to go. So we don't try to microwave any kid. We will put goals out in front of them and say, hey, if you are able to, improve in these 2 or 3 events, that might give you enough, of an IMX score, and maybe you'll get to go to OTC because our LSC will sponsor, trips for some of our top age group kids to go and train there. And then when we have kids that come back, the last 3 times we've done it, we've always had 1 male, 1 female, and they've usually been the top or one of the very top. And then we have them come back and talk to the rest of the age groupers. They're 13, 14, or just turning 15. We'll have them talk to the age groupers about how amazing the trip was. Or, if we take a trip to, Clearwater or Orlando or Indy, then we usually have our senior division kids talk to the age group kids about that, because our age group kids don't travel really quite as much right now. So we're trying to give them a vision of something to look forward to and something to work towards. So that's how we usually do it.
What's one thing for you, like Chad? I know you spent 20 years as an age group coach, and Scott, you've been consistent at your club. Both of you guys really have been consistent at your club for as long as most people that I know in the sport. Have you guys seen a change in the dynamic of the way kids respond to being coached in a challenging way? I see both of you guys shaking your head yes, and I mean, I think all 4 of us are saying, there's a part of me that wants to coach the boys the way I was coached in baseball and basketball and football and swimming and whatever other sports I played. But I just don't know that that's the reality of the way that they don't have PE right now. So they don't do that competition stuff at school. And, with COVID, they're even less likely to be doing athletic stuff to get coached hard. So, I mean, what changes have you guys seen with kids, guys and girls?
I'll start. When I first started, probably, this was back in '99. I didn't know a whole lot. I just thought, okay, it's like, I grew up playing all kinds of different sports. So I thought it was like, okay, I'm just going to yell like my basketball coach did, or yell like my soccer coach did. So I got into that, and, that probably worked back then. I think that worked for a couple of years. Got some pretty good responses from that, but I've seen, and as I've matured through the sport of coaching, especially probably in the last 5 to 10 years, kids these days, they don't respond, at least from what I've seen, respond to hard coaching. You get a few that like the yelling, like the in your face, get me going type thing. And then, I think a lot of the kids these days aren't in that type of mode anymore. So I've had to change a whole lot on how I approach, how I even trying to yell at a kid or even trying to coach them hard. You got to be a little bit softer with the voice. I think boys can take it a little bit more as they get a little bit older. I've seen a lot of success over the last year since I've taken over the head coaching job. The boys are a little bit more receptive to a little bit more aggressive than some of the girls. But the girls I like patting them on the back and encouraging them all the time. They seem to respond a lot better to that type of coaching than they did, 15 years ago.
Yeah, for me, I started coaching actually at the Catonsville Y in '89, so I did 4 years there, and I was actually still swimming in college for Sid Burkott, and he's a Reading, Pennsylvania guy, and so when I started coaching, I was almost coaching like him. I yelled all the time, and I think I kind of got away with it though because the kids knew how much I cared about them. So when I came to Eagles in '92, it was pretty much the same way. I was probably freaking out at least once or twice a week on my kids. So over time, though, things have changed where, back then I maybe had one really sensitive athlete, and now I feel like I have one or two really strong kids that can handle that. And most of them are great kids, but, how we approach, mistakes or if they should go faster is so much different now. And some of it is they beat themselves up. They're already putting so much pressure on themselves academically and performance wise that I feel like I cannot necessarily do that, unless I know the kid is really strong willed. But, I think that's if you're going to stay in the sport, you've got to really know your kids and know which buttons you can push. And I think, we all know that there's certain kids where you're going to have to just tell that one, hey, should have been better than that. I'm not sure what happened there. And then other kids you can say right away, like, what the crap, what was that? And that's the key is I think you got to build a relationship first if we're going to really be hard on them.
So for me, I used to be, I started out kind of like Chad. I was pretty aggressive and pretty in their face, and I thought I knew everything. And like Scott said, I really did care. So I think the kids, I got away with that to a degree. And that's back when kids didn't go home and tell their parents that they got yelled at. So I got away with it. And then I transitioned into more of just a beat them down with sarcasm if they're not doing what they're supposed to. And that's pretty much been my approach ever since is, hey, that wasn't very good. Is there something wrong? And they're like, no, nothing's wrong. I'm like, well, I don't know. And so we just kind of go around and round with that until we finally get through. Then the other thing that I try to do, and I think I've seen it more in the girls than I've seen it with the guys, but I feel like a lot of girls these days will either consciously or subconsciously do things on the way into a championship meet to give them an excuse if it doesn't work out. And I've recognized that and called some kids out on it and said, well, if we're going to build in our excuse for why we're going to fail, let's just not even go to the meet. Let's just call it a day and, take your money you were going to spend and go to Disney World or something, do something fun. Because if we're going to go to the meet and we know we're going to fail because we've built in these excuses, I don't want to do it. And, I talk a lot about not creating adversarial relationships with the athletes. That's one of the things that I really try to avoid. And if I feel like I'm getting into a situation where I've become the adversary, I'm not going to have it. We're going to sit down and have a conversation about how this is me helping you and you doing what I'm asking so you can find success. So that's kind of the direction that I take with it. And it's a lot more of a partnership. There's times when, we did pulleys today, and the group that I did them with had no idea what was going on. And I was very frustrated, and I got a little bit upset with them, but it was more because we weren't paying attention to what we were doing. It wasn't because, we weren't performing or whatever. I tell them all the time, I can accept the lack of performance. I can't accept the lack of effort. So that's kind of our mantra. What do you got going on over there, Tyler?
Yeah, I think Mike hit this a couple weeks ago, and I think this is a great point. The way he put it, probably a lot more eloquently than I can. But yeah, I think it's important to help them understand as coaches that it's theirs. It's not mom and dad's swimming career. It's not our swimming career that we're living through them as their coach. And so the things that we're telling them to do, those are things that we're trying to give them to help them achieve the goals that they tell us that they want. So it's really important for them to communicate with us and let us know what their expectations are or what their goals are. We talked about identifying those really talented kids, and sometimes those really talented kids are just so talented that the only thing they want to do is just go out there and beat people. And they when they're younger, they have that ability to just get up and do that. And sometimes they miss that work ethic phase that those kids that personally, I love seeing that kid who is a hard worker figure it out. It may be later, but they figure it out, and then they start catching up, and then they start passing people because they're doing things the right way. They're doing the things that you ask them to do, but ultimately they've taken the most ownership of it. Those kids that develop late in the game, I think they're the ones who come in and really take hold of their own swimming career. It's not mom or dad. And I can't remember if it was Mike or who it was a couple weeks ago, Brian, but they said, show me an Olympian and I'll show you a parent that stayed out of the way. Those guys, you guys have both coached really, really high level, top end performance guys. And so you'd be able to tell from a national perspective better than I can, but those guys that get to that level, they own it and it's theirs. And, their failures are a product of what they haven't done, and their successes are a product of the things that they've done really well over a period of time. So, I try to really impress upon them that it's theirs. I'm going to give you everything I can all the time to kind of help you get there. So, Brian, I think you're muted. There you go.
Yeah, one of the other things I was going to ask real quick is, I mean, and I've touched on this in a few of the other shows, but like when you get a kid that's really talented at 10, 11, and 12, and they're just better than everybody else because they're either bigger or stronger, or they're just better. I mean, some kids are just got a feel for the water. I know for me, I'm really careful to hold everybody accountable equally. Because I know I screwed up my first couple really good kids because I didn't hold them accountable and they never learned what Tyler was talking about. Everything was okay because we were swimming fast. It was like, oh, well, like I'd say, if you work harder, you could be really great, but I never really held them accountable for that. And so I think that's one of the things that as a career, I've developed an ability to not be enamored by the best kids. I'm still proud of them, and I still love seeing fast swimming, but we don't treat them any differently, and I think that helps bring the group along behind them as well. So what are you guys' thoughts on that?
Hey, real quick in a follow-up, Scott, I want to ask you, talk about, so you've been there for that since 92. Talk about the most successful kid you guys have ever had come through your program, and just kind of give the audience an idea of what that person was like as an age group swimmer and then what they were like as a senior swimmer.
Yeah, actually, that's a perfect segue because I was going to tell a pretty good story. So
perfect.
We had a young man come into our program at 10 and, showed some really good ability. And at 12, my head age group coach at the time, Jeff Tagle, he got him at 10, was working with him because he turned 11 somewhere in that season. And then when he was 12, he ended up breaking 3 of our LSC records, 50 fly, 100 fly, 2 fly. And he finished the year number 1 in the U.S. And then unfortunately, some of those records were Michael's records, Michael Phelps. But, I knew Bob and I are friends, and I knew what Bob was doing with Michael, and he wasn't necessarily focusing on fly. He had him doing the mile, had him doing the 400 IM. So when this young man, Giles Smith, broke those records, there was a lot of excitement, right? He broke Michael Phelps's records, #1 in the country. So I realized that we were going to need a lot of education for Giles and for his parents, who are amazing. They were amazing. So basically, I took the USA Swimming top 100 times, and Giles at the time might have been 9th or 10th. And then I highlighted all the kids in the top 20 or top 50. Then I went to the top 100, 17, 18, and highlighted the same kids that were in the top 100. So I highlighted, I guess, 50 kids. And then at 17, 18, those kids were, I think it was only 7 of them. So you went from 50 to 7. And I asked his parents, I said, where do you think they went? Like, why are they not in the top? They're not even in the top 100. They went from the top 50. And then most of those kids were not even in the top 100. There was only 7. So we talked about, we really needed to focus on a lot of long-term development for Giles, and that we were going to make him swim all the events, all the IMX events, 1,000-mile. So when he was 14, he went to his first sectionals and he won the 200 free. He went 140 point. And I really think that helped him because, all he really wanted to do, and I still talk to him weekly because he's still swimming. He's a professional swimmer in the ISL. But all he wanted to do when he first came to us was 50 free, 50 fly. That was it. So when he was his senior year, he had to do the 1,000, the 400 IM, and the 2 back 3 weeks before he went 19.7, which at the time was the national record. And so we made him swim long all the way through. And I think that really helped prolong his career. And we made him swim all the strokes, which we thought was important. And, he went on to be, so then after he was #1 as a 12-year-old, he wasn't #1 again until he was 17, 18. So during those other years, we were still working, and he was getting better, but, we weren't worried about the rankings, So for all the coaches out there that are working with some pretty good athletes and their kids or the parents are fascinated with rankings, you've got to really try to educate them that that's great, but don't be, fixated on just where you rank nationally. You got to be thinking about what you need to do to get better.
So, hey, real quick, Scott, I vaguely remember a story about Giles. You talking about how he liked to do pull-ups. Didn't he do pull-ups like between sets and stuff or something like that? Was that how the story went?
Yeah, well, we would just try to find, and again, if you have a kid, and he has ability, and but he also liked to work. People didn't realize that he liked to work, but he needed challenges too. So sometimes we would say, all right, well, in between, if we're doing like dive stuff, there's a pull-up bar, he might go over and do a couple pull-ups, or sometimes he would just do stuff on deck. He would be doing inverted pull-ups, hanging upside down. He liked to work. He liked to be challenged, so sometimes you do pull-ups with a weight vest on, and that really helped our program because people saw that, he was good, but, he also did the work. It's because I'll have kids now that'll say they want to be sprinters, and I'll say like Giles, and they'll say, yeah. And I'll say, okay, well, he went 4:37 as a sophomore with a jammer in the 500. Can you do that? And they're like, no. And I'm like, all right, well, it's because he did the work. So I do think if you have an athlete that can handle the work, because he could, then we need to make sure they do the work. There's obviously some kids that's going to be a little bit harder with, but quick story there, but it definitely, he's still swimming now. He's still, I guess he's 28 and he's still going. So.
Successful guy to come through your program. You probably coached him as an age grouper and watched them go on to the senior level, or maybe you've got him now. What's that been like for you guys there at Clippers?
Yeah, any of our kids that, and you kind of, I missed a little bit of what you said. My computer kind of froze a little bit, so I'm assuming we're still on the same topic. We do from, at the time that they're 9 and 10, we start introducing some aerobic training. Our 8 and unders are just drill, kick, swim 25s, maybe some 50s. But starting at about the age of 9, some of our more advanced 9 and 10-year-olds, we start introducing a lot of the aerobic long freestyle sets, long kicking. And then we work on a lot of IM, lots of IM. We swim 200 IMs, 100 IMs, 300s, 400s, as long as are capable of doing it. We're not pushing them and being sloppy in the process. But as our best swimmers have come through the program, they start with a lot of aerobic training and a lot of weak stroke. We call it weak stroke training. Their fourth best stroke. They do a lot of that to make their IM better. We always tell our kids if you don't have a breaststroke, you're not really going to be that great of a 4IMer. So if breaststroke is your weakest stroke, that's the stroke we're going to spend a lot of time on making that better. And as they turn 15, 16, 17 years old, then we start identifying, okay, this kid's going to be more of a 200 kid or a 100 kid. This kid's going to be more of a 500 miler. And we were letting the head coaches identify that. But for our 14 and unders, we do a lot of distance free, a lot of distance IM, lots of it.
So Chad, you were talking about Brian. I didn't know if you want. I'm gonna jump in here and move to we wanted to talk a little bit about groups, and you mentioned 8 and unders have a certain focus that they're on. They're on technique, drills, and kicking, and then your 9-10s you start adding to that. So to you guys, Scott, we talked about it a little bit pre-production. What's the group structure at Eagle, and how you kind of take your age group kids through your program?
And how has it changed over the years?
Yeah.
Right. So I guess it was like 3 years ago, our head age group coach at the time, Clark Nyman, who's still with us, but now he has actually moved to the center of the age group program because he is now the head coach at Stevenson University here in Baltimore. I kind of put him in charge of studying some other gold medal clubs and looking at how they had structured the age group program. So we changed now where we have 2 kind of mini groups. One is called an intro, which is kids that are right out of our lesson program. The other one would be our true minis. Maybe they have a summer league background, and that is pretty much 8 and unders. There might be some 9s that are, maybe a little bit undersized. They just haven't grown yet. So we have the 2 mini groups, and then we have bronze, silver, and gold. So we have a bronze 1 and 2, and those are meant to be for strictly 9 and 10s. But again, we'll have some kids that will be 10 turning 11 before the LSC meet. And obviously our level bronze 1 is a little more developmental. And then bronze 2 is kids are maybe stronger for that age group. And then we do silver same way. And then we do gold. So, and our silver is 11, 12s, and then our gold is 13, 14. So we do have some strict, some performance components and also some training sets so that the athletes and the parents kind of know what we're looking at when we do the progressions, right? Because I'm sure all of us, have encountered parents being really upset about sometimes where carpools either get split or they get split with their friends just because one is maybe, a late bloomer or something like that. And we always try to emphasize that, we do think highly of the kid. He's just not necessarily ready for this next group. We want to keep them in the program. So that's how this works. A kid can be a late bloomer and then instead of staying in a silo is able to go across and go to the more advanced group. So, but the practice times are very similar. The level 1 of each one is just a little bit less, maybe 15% less.
Chad, what's it look like for you guys over there? I know you guys have a good design as well.
Yeah, we've got we start with our exploring group. That's our mostly 8 and unders that are brand new to the sport. They may have been on the team for maybe a season. They're still trying to learn the butterfly, breaststroke. They got a pretty good handle on the freestyle and backstroke, but probably pretty illegal in butterfly and breaststroke. So they're just getting their feet wet, and their parents are just getting their feet wet in our exploring group. And then we have 2 9 and 10 groups. We have a learning 1 and a learning 2. Learning 1 is, that new 9 and 10-year-old or just turned 9, been on the team since they were 6 or 7. And then our learning 2 is more of our advanced 9 and 10-year-olds. Then we have our dreaming 1 and 2, kind of the same setup for our 11, 12s. And then our 13, 14s is called our planning 1 and planning 2 group. And then our senior groups are achieving and performing, with the performing group being our top group. But as far as practice structure goes, and I know Scott said something about dealing with parents, we try to get our kids in, like all of our 9 and 10-year-olds in at the same time. We try to get all of our 11, 12s in at the same time as much as possible anyway. The way that our pool's set up and our pool time, it's impossible to get them in at the same time every day, or at least it has been before COVID. Since COVID, we've been able to get them in every day, just based on how things are working out. But we try to get them in as often as we can together. So one, they're with their peers. So if they have that split, that carpool split, or they have that friendship split, they at least get to hang out with them before practice, after practice, a couple times a week. And then dealing with a couple of the parents that are unhappy that their kid's not in our top group, our Dreaming 2 group, our top 11, 12 group, having those guys in the water at the same time, the lead coach of that group can say, all right, Johnny, mom and dad say, you want to try this? Do you want to try this? They have that opportunity to slide over and give it a go. And if they do a great job, then, we've got something to work with. If they just aren't quite ready, at least the kid knows, okay, here's what I need to work on. All right, mom and dad, here's what happened. Here's how we're going to move forward to hopefully get that kid ready to move into that group. So, we try to keep them in the water at the same time, but doesn't always work that way, but we try.
We've got a similar structure to Scott. We've got bronze one, we've got red and black, which is our intro groups, and then we've got bronze 1, silver, or bronze 1, bronze 2, silver 1, silver 2, gold 1, gold 2, and then ags, and then national prep, and then national. And we have that at all of our sites, pretty streamlined across all the sites. There's a few little differences between the national coaches, what they want from a directive, but pretty much the groups are about the same. The 2-track within our program is the little bit older kids that are about the same as the 1-track that are a little bit younger. So our 1-track is actually the opposite of Scott's 1 and 2 tracks, the way that we set it up. At my particular site, we do more. We judge it more on well, since COVID, we've had to worry about numbers a lot more because of the number of kids in the pool. When you can only put 2 or 4 kids in a lane, it changes up your dynamic quite a bit. So we've had to deal with that. But we just kind of look at where we're at and try to have the kids flow through the program. I'm not a big age requirement guy. I think a good 11-year-old girl that's matured physically and is mentally pretty smart swimming wise is fine swimming with the 13, 14 girls, if that's where she needs to be from a talent level. So I'm a little bit different in that, and I can blame that on John Morse and Randy Reese, because that's where I learned that. And both those guys have done pretty well, so we're going to stick with it as long as it keeps working. But that's kind of the way we structure things. I coach the national prep and the AGS group, which are our top 2 age group. That's where everything funnels into. And then I move them up to national, up into Jason. So that's kind of where we're at. What about you guys, Tyler?
Yeah, I mean, y'all are making me feel like I need to add some groups right now. We're not a large team, by any means. We operate between.
Nope. Tyler froze up. But yeah, so that's kind of the way we structure things. So guys, we were talking a little bit about move ups or promotions or whatever, however you want to call it. I think Mike called it something different, but what do you guys do? What do you base that on? What do you how do you do that? Is it coach's discretion? Is it a test set? Is it attendance? Is it practice? What are we looking at? And how many different things are we looking at when we move kids through the program and how we do that? So, Scott, what do you got?
Yeah. So, we have a couple different things that we're looking at in the criteria. We always, we're always looking at the commitment piece because that's one of our core values. So we look at attendance, right? And we did hold a couple kids back this year, and it was harder, obviously, with COVID too, because we weren't able to evaluate their progress through the spring, which we normally do for the fall placements. But we look at attendance, and that's an important piece because that is something that they can control, or at least the parents have some control in that also. And then we look at the performance standards. So we usually look at whether it be our LSC championship meets, or is it, AAA, single A, double A, AAA, or sectional cuts for our senior division where they're going to advance. But we also look at like IMX score, because we talk about that all the time, and we post those all around the pool, with the rankings so kids can see, and kids will set goals based on their IMX scores. We had a girl that 4,000, and I kept telling her, I'm like, you really should probably swim the 400 IM one more time. And she goes, I think I'm good. And then this IMX scores finished, and she had 3,999. It was like, well, you just missed. So, but we look at IMX scores also, and then we just try to, put all that together with the tracking sets that they have to be able to do to advance to the next group.
What about you, Chad? Oh, you're on mute.
Oh, there we go. We don't do a lot of. We have a very relaxed baseline on how we're going to move kids up into our learning two, dreaming two, planning two groups. It really depends on the group structure and the group dynamics, and the numbers that are in the water at that time. I've taken some kids that I probably in past years haven't moved into our top groups just because numbers for that group are low for whatever reason, or there's kids that have gone above and beyond what some of the other kids in past years have gone, but because of the way the dynamic is in the group, that the number of kids in the group, or the way that they're training, it depends on how that particular swimmer would fit into the group and how their cycles would go into. We also look at work ethic and can the swimmer handle a little bit more of a workout load than what they've done in the past. Some of our better swimmers, are they're only coming a couple times a week, or they're just not the best workout swimmers, and they succeed in our lower groups right now, and that's okay. Let them develop when they want to, when they feel that they're ready. I go back a couple of years ago. One of our top swimmers didn't make it into our top training group until they were 14 years old. Just didn't really want to do it. But in a meet, they were first place, LSC records, things like that. They just the workload was just too much for them at that time. And then as they matured and got a little bit older, they came to the head coach at the time and said, "Hey, I'm ready to take this step," and boom, there we went. So I think it depends on the kid. I think it also depends for us on the group structure and the group dynamics during that season.
Hey guys, I'm back in. Sorry, had a little bit of internet issue here at the house, but I got a chance to hear kind of both of what you guys said. One of the things that I wanted to kind of ask you guys is, when you're looking at your groups and you're evaluating who gets in, how do you have those conversations? Do you have those conversations individually with the athlete? Do you include the family in that conversation? How do you communicate to the family that their kid is moving up? Or are you just telling that 14-year-old boy, "Hey, you're going to go to achieving, or you're going to go to whatever group, you're going to go to gold, or you're going to go to our senior prep group"? Are you having that conversation, emailing the family with those expectations? What's that look like for you guys?
Yeah. So, well, I'll be the first one to say that it's never a perfect process, and we're still kind of trying to make it better. I don't know if it'll ever be perfect, but typically we do advancements. We don't really do them in December. We used to, but now we usually do spring advancements after the short course season. And typically we will, as a staff, our age group coaches will meet, and then they'll talk about, the criteria. Obviously there's a space component too. You can't have, a coach want to push an entire, or 20 kids up, and the other group doesn't have space. So there has to be some conversations there, but typically, I know as they start moving up more into the age group program and they have a little bit more maturity, a lot of times we'll actually tell the athletes, like, hey, if you're interested in an advancement, we want you to tell us, like, come and talk to us, because we're trying to get them to take ownership of their swimming and advocate for themselves. So, but as a staff, they'll discuss that. They'll look at the criteria. They'll look also, and ultimately, I will say that it is the coach's decision. I don't want to say it's solely just by the numbers. I mean, there is a coaching decision that comes into there with, do we think they can handle it? We try to really educate the parents too that, the kids will progress better. A lot of times I think ego gets involved and they're worried about, their child's getting left behind. But, we've told them many stories. And I think that's a benefit of staying in a program for a long time, is you can share some stories about some great kids that have come through your program that maybe were in the more developmental groups. And then all of a sudden they grew or they clicked. So we do that also. For our senior division, they actually do kind of a simple online Google form as like an application, because that kind of holds them accountable. They have to put in their attendance. So right away they have to admit to what it is. Is it 42% or is it 92%? And then all the different criteria. So and then we read the applications and then we schedule meetings with them and then talk about it. So typically that eliminates a lot, at least in the senior division. So it's just, my age group coaches all work full-time jobs except for my head age group coach. So it's hard for those other coaches to have all those meetings, even though we'd like to do that. It's very time consuming. So.
Yeah, what about you guys?
As far as talking to the kids, I think it depends on the age. When I'm dealing with a 10-year-old, I'll talk to the parents first, kind of get their feel of, one, are you guys ready to make a commitment, a little bit more of a commitment, and is little Susie, she talked about it at home about possibly moving up. Then I definitely go back and talk to the kid if mom and dad are ready to make that commitment, and then talking to the swimmer and getting them excited for that move up. Once they hit 11 and 12, I'll talk to the kid first, make sure that they're on board, because if they're not on board, then there's no sense in moving forward, talking to the parents. But we try to make this a swimmer-driven sport and a swimmer-driven activity. So the swimmer is our number one contact, and if they're ready, and we let them go home, talk to mom and dad. Mom and dad have any questions, hey, shoot us an email. We're more than happy to sit down and meet, and answer any questions, concerns that you might have with this move up, and we just go from there. But like I said, I think I like that application. I think that gives the kids a sense of this is mine, and they have to admit to their pros and they have to admit to their cons, and I really enjoy that. So I might reach out to you, Scott, later and get that application from you and use that. But I like that. But yeah, I think it's got to be swimmer driven. Yeah.
So here, one of the things that we do a little differently than any other program I've been at is we do in March and in August, we do pretty much every group below national prep the coaches do individual evaluations. And part of that evaluation is also which group you're going to report to the next season. So we will hand out those evaluations, and then basically once the evaluations are handed out, then some coaches have the conversations while they're handing out the evaluations. Some coaches hand out the evaluations and wait to see which conversations come back, and kind of go from there. So we just kind of assign them to where they're going to be the next group level. And then we will have individual conversations to discuss what the requirements are, what the expectations are, what it is we need to be doing to be part of that next group. So that's kind of the way we do it, which is a little bit different than anywhere else I've ever been. Everywhere else I've been, we've done it more of, and what I do with the national prep and AGS and national is, I basically make that decision, and then I'll have a conversation with the athlete and say, hey, this is what I'm thinking about, and see how they'll react to it, and then go from there. And almost always here, if we move a kid or we tell a kid they're going to move, they pretty much take it. And they're like, yeah, all right, sweet, I get to go up. And that's pretty much where we're at with it. So,
what's the here's a question for you guys we actually didn't talk about in pre-production, but I'd love to know what's the biggest mistake you guys have ever made during the move up process that has stuck with you with an athlete. And I'll start while you guys get a chance to think. I had a group of kids that I thought were I thought that they were ready as far as physically. They were physically could do make the intervals. They could make the number of practices. Performance was fine. That wasn't an issue, but it was, I based it on too much of the performance side of whether they were ready or not. And I didn't consider enough the psychological and the maturity side of what that expectation was going to be. Because they went from what it was at that time, my junior group, who had 6 practices a week, and they were making 5 of those, to, you're going to move to our senior group, and that expectation is now going to be that there are 8 workouts a week, and you're going to make 7 of those. And, that obviously means there's got to be more mornings in there, and they weren't ready for that commitment level yet. And they didn't really understand the idea that schedule is going to require you to maybe give up a few other things that you like to do. You can't play that extra video game and things like that. So I moved a group of kids up in a block, because I do like to move group of kids in a block so that they have each other to learn with. But I moved so many of them in a block that when they got there, I moved a group basically to the bottom of that group. So it's one of the things I've tried to learn from, is never putting a group of kids or any kid individually in a group where they're going to immediately go in and be the slowest kid in the group or be at the bottom of the training group. So what about you guys?
I'll go first. I actually, we talk about how long I've been at Eagle, but to be 100% truthful, I actually left here for 2 years and went and was the head coach of the Retriever Aquatic Club. And that was 98 to 2000. So during that time, because I'm a graduate of UMBC, so I went there to go work with my college coach and help with the college and lead the club. There was a group of 13, 14 boys that some were already on the team. One came over with me, one transferred in, and they were all the top boys in our LSC at 12. And, my group was already huge, but they wanted to be with me, and I was 28 and definitely too much hubris. I was like, okay, no problem. They'll come in with me. And they all quit. And they just weren't ready emotionally. They weren't ready for the training. Cause I remember one day we were doing, like a Janet Evans set long course, 1 200 IM, 2 400 IM, 3 800 IM, 4 1000 IMs, right? These kids are 14 and they all quit. And it's really my fault. So, at that time I should have been smarter and said, well, let's start in this group and then kind of bring them along. So that's an example of me really, messing those kids up, and I still feel bad about it to this day. So,
yeah, I think pretty much along the same lines. I think mine was more of a I was young at the time, and had a kid that was really talented, but again wasn't quite ready mentally, wasn't quite ready even physically at the time. And mom and dad are pushing me, and my kid's beating everybody in the meet, and they're doing this, setting this record, whatever. And so I gave into it, and a year later, because this kid wasn't ready, they were gone. We lost them, and I after that, looking back on it and seeing what happened, what did I do wrong, and it goes back to giving in to the parents, and I think that we've got to take a stand against sometimes with the parents and just saying, hey, you're on this team, you trust me, or you don't trust me. If you don't trust me, then maybe this isn't the program for you. But you have to trust me and trust my judgment. I've been doing this long enough and have seen some pretty good results from it. And let's do this for the kid. Let's work this together. But if the parents are pushing and the kid's not ready, then that kid's probably not going to make it through the program.
I don't make any mistakes. I don't make any mistakes.
That's not true. That's not true. I was gonna. We had Brian and I had some fun with a conversation about some of this stuff earlier or late last week. So, what you got, Brian?
No, I mean, I think with mine, I'm pretty good with the move up thing. I usually am pretty good about figuring out which kids can go where and stuff like that. I think probably early on in my career, like I alluded to earlier, I looked more at performance and I looked less at what they needed to be doing to be successful on the next level. And I think that in certain instances, I probably should have fought a little harder with some of my head coaches about moving some kids up that I didn't feel comfortable moving up, that they wanted to move up because they had the speed and they had the talent, but they didn't have the work ethic. And I probably gave in a little bit too easily. In a few instances, there's a couple that stand out in my brain from when I was working with John in Nashville, because he loved to pull kids up faster. And I just had some kids that they were super talented, but they just couldn't train. And I gave in a little too easy on those. That'd probably be the biggest mistakes that I've made when it comes to, that kind of stuff.
All right. What you got, Chad? You got anything else?
No, on that subject, no.
All right. Well, I think we got just about a minute or so. I just wanted to say thank you guys both for taking time out of your weekend. Brian, I know you had practice today, and I think hopefully you guys are getting some swim meets, maybe swim meets on the horizon coming up as we get into the fall, and hopefully we get some good news for all of us to start adding more kids to our programs and be able to reach more kids, because I know it's been great getting a chance to share some information with you guys on Sunday afternoon, but personally, I'd love to be able to be at some swim meets every once in a while in the next few months or so. So just want to say thanks for you guys for taking time out of your day to join us, and so much great information there.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you guys. Thank you guys a bunch, man. Love having you on, and it's great to see both of you guys again. Stay in touch, and I may steal that application form from you too, Scott.
It sounds like post-production Scott's going to get hit up for some emails coming up pretty soon for sure.
I'm fine. Email me, no?
Hey, and then guys out there that are listening, got another good show planned. We got Russell Mark from USA Swimming coming on next week. We're going to talk long axis strokes. Did short axis with Russell a few weeks ago, and I think it replayed on day before Labor Day. So we'll have Russell come back next week, and we're going to talk about long axis. So everybody tune back in, Holding Water next week. Brian, you got anything before we go?
That's about it, man. Thank you guys, and thank everybody for watching. And hopefully everybody learned something or got something out of this. That's the whole goal. Pick up something, that you can take back and apply. So I know I got something. So
for sure.
Thank you guys, and peace out.
Yeah.
Awesome,
take care.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity. Take care.
Join us on the Swim Monkey.
Swim
Swim Monkey.
Monkey TV. On the Monkey.